Right, breaking news development coming in now, attributed to the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as he lands at about 8 p.m. Hiroshima time in Japan, has given an interview to the noted Japanese daily Nikkei Asia, and there in that interview, he has spoken about certain aspects of India's neighborhood policy, particularly on China and Pakistan, has also, of course, said that the United Nations needs reforms, particularly the Security Council. The Prime Minister has said, and I quote, "The credibility of the United Nations Security Council and its decision-making process." Okay, now let's first break this story about what he has said on China, which is India is fully prepared and committed to protect its sovereignty and dignity vis-a-vis our Himalayan border amid the standoff with China that continues along the line of actual control. In fact, Prime Minister has said, and I quote, "Peace and tranquility in the border areas are essential for normal bilateral ties with China. The future development of India-China relationship can only be based on mutual respect, mutual sensitivity and mutual interests." The newspaper has quoted Prime Minister as saying. Also, Prime Minister has said that normalizing the ties would benefit the wider region and the world. Prime Minister Modi on China in an interview to a Japanese daily, the Nikkei Asia group. Prime Minister has said on Pakistan that the onus is entirely on Pakistan to take necessary steps to keep the atmosphere conducive, free from terrorism and hostilities if Pakistan wants good neighborly relations. Remember, Prime Minister took off for Hiroshima, Japan earlier in the morning, and about an 8 hours flight he would be landing anytime now, in fact, in Hiroshima, and he would be participating in the G7 Leaders Summit as a special invitee of the Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida, and he would be participating also in the mini Quad summit that's going to take place, given the fact that the full-fledged Quad that was happening in Australia is not happening because President Joe Biden has cut short his Asia-Pacific visit and returns immediately from Japan back to Washington, D.C. Shawan Sen, in fact, joins us over the phone. Shawan, important headlines coming in there from Prime Minister's interview to Nikkei Asia of Japan. You think Prime Minister on his trip to Asia Pacific has decided that a message be sent to both China and Pakistan from an international platform so that they are clear about India's position vis-a-vis territorial integrity and sovereignty? As in the case of China, given the standoff we are having in Ladakh, so in the case of Pakistan, kind of terror activities we continue to see coming in from our western neighbor. Shawan? Right, I think we dropped the line there with Shawan. We'll try and connect again. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi making some very important observations in on our neighborhood, on China, on Pakistan, on the United Nations. In fact, suggesting that the United Nations Security Council needs reforms. The credibility of the UNSC and its decision-making process will always be questioned if it continues to deny representation on a permanent basis to the world's largest democracy, as well as entire continents like Africa and Latin America. Prime Minister there is strongly batting for UN reforms there, not just for India, but for the larger South. And hence, the comments made by Prime Minister are being seen as India's strong pitch for South-South cooperation, in fact, working in tandem to make sure that international organizations like the United Nations, if they need to be more, if they want to be more effective, need to include voices like India, world's largest democracy, as well as those from Africa and Latin America to become more effective. We have seen how the UN Security Council procedures have been misused, abused by the Chinese, for example, when it comes to designation of Pakistan-based terrorists. The manner in which, for example, the Chinese stonewalled the possibility of Masood Azhar being declared a global terrorist for almost a decade. And the Prime Minister now sending across a message to Pakistan that India wants peace and friendly and neighborly relations. But then it is incumbent upon Pakistan to create conducive environment. Prime Minister, in fact, has landed in Hiroshima, Japan. This is 8 p.m. local time there. Prime Minister's special aircraft, Air India 1 as it is called, landing in Hiroshima. And the first pictures coming in of Prime Minister's aircraft landing there, as Prime Minister has gone on a 3-nation trip to participate in G7 summit in Japan, participate in the Forum for India Pacific Islands countries, PIPIC in Papua New Guinea, and then of course to Australia for a bilateral component with an address to the Indian community, the diaspora present in Australia. That would be a very important event to watch out for. But then, as of now, we can see in the pictures Prime Minister arriving in Hiroshima, Japan, and